In honor of Black History Month, I have a question for you. Are you a Black woman who's struggling with whether to seek mental and emotional health support because you feel like you have to be the strong one, or you have to be strong all the time, quote unquote strong all the time? Well, I've been there, so let me tell you about it. So, on my website, janetlynnboswell.com, I have an infographic, and it is called Trauma in Black Women. And on it, I briefly talk about 5 challenges that, in my experience, we as Black women tend to face with regarding seeking mental and emotional health support. And I want to share those briefly with you and my own challenge with them, and what I did or how I overcame each one of these 5 challenges. First of all, let me tell you this, and this is at the top of the infographic. There's a note that says that chronic stress equals illness. I could also say that what we call chronic or consistent trauma or traumatic experiences, complex or developmental trauma equals illness. And there are statistics out there, and I'm not going to share the statistics today. Maybe I'll do another podcast episode where I really get into the statistics, because there are many of them out there and you can seek them out and find them easily. But there is, I want to say, the most recent research I looked at, I know it said at least 90% of all physical illness can be traced back to chronic stress, or I also like to use the word trauma. So because we are spirit, soul, and body, they are all interconnected. I think I talked about that on the last podcast episode 10. And so one affects the other. So if we are struggling spiritually, if we're struggling emotionally, if we're struggling mentally, it's all going to affect our physical. And they all affect each other because they're all interconnected. You cannot separate spirit, soul, and body. Okay? So that's the first thing I want you to know. And as Black women, we face the following challenges to seeking mental and emotional health support. And there may be others, but these were just the 5 that I noted. One is culture. And it says, due to a history of trauma, many Black women do not feel worthy to put themselves first by honoring their mental and emotional health. And we can trace this back historically, where we as Black women were not allowed to feel worthy. We were not allowed to put ourselves first because we had to take care of everyone else. And so that tendency, that mindset has passed down through the generations. And I, throughout my life, all the way up until my late 30s, I was just about to turn 40 when I finally realized that I had to take just a brief period and put myself first and seek the mental and emotional health, counseling, therapy, support, coaching that I needed. For my daughter's sake and my son's sake. But for my daughter's sake, because she was looking to me as an example of Black womanhood, and I didn't want to keep passing down that tradition of not really putting my emotional and mental health needs in the forefront as a priority. I knew I had been struggling my whole life, couldn't really pinpoint what it was I was struggling with, but I just knew that if I didn't start dealing with the root causes of these things, then she was going to struggle. And let me tell you something, I still didn't feel worthy to do it, okay? And because God knew that, what he did was he caused me to have a dream one night. And in this dream, I was walking with my daughter, and right in front of my face, I saw her begin to disappear. And there were some other things that happened in the dream, but when I woke up, I was terrified. And I told God, whatever it is I gotta do, wherever it is I gotta go, you just tell me, and I'm there, because I didn't want her to lose her identity. And to me, that's what that represented. Her not having a strong sense of her identity, her own identity, who God created her to be. And that is what caused me to have the courage and the strength to go ahead and check myself into a residential counseling facility. And at this particular facility, they had people in every area of counseling and coaching, from the PhD licensed psychiatrist on that, not on down, but I'll say more so in a circular pattern, because everyone played a different role on the team, and everyone was beneficial, and I needed everyone, including the Bible teacher, who was the Bible teacher / spiritual counselor. So I saw every sort of area of mental health and wellness support being represented. And so as I come to you today, let me say, this is not a promo for me to try to get you to come and get trauma recovery coaching from me, because what I do know is you have to go to the person who you connect with, the person who feels safe for you. And I'm going to talk some more about that later on, about that that person needing to be a safe person for you. Okay, number 2 is family. Many Black families view a woman as weak if she cries or expresses anxiety, depression, or emotional pain. And I was just talking to some women recently about that, about how we don't feel comfortable crying because we feel like we have to be strong, and if we break down, everybody else is going to break down too. not understanding that maybe we all need to break down and that it's okay to break down. Jesus, our example of how to live abundantly and what I call the overflow life, broke down, cried in front of people that he loved. And so it's okay for us to do that. But I remember this so vividly when I was on my way to the clinic, driving to the clinic. My mind started to release some of the blocked memories that had been there for decades. And it must have known that I was going to a safe place where I could begin to unearth some of these things. And so tears began to well up in me, and my eyes began to get wet. And I think maybe even the tears began to fall a little bit. But it's as if as soon as the tears began to fall, there was an automatic shutoff valve that kicked in and dried them up. It was so crazy. It was automatic, which says to me that was what my brain had become accustomed to doing, because I didn't feel that it was safe to be vulnerable and to cry. And so my brain had learned to immediately shift out of that mode and shut off those tears. And when I tried to access them and allow them to fall, I couldn't do it. And even now today, I'm better at allowing myself to cry when I need to, but I still feel the need to dry them up quickly. Okay, so the next one is financial. Oh, let me finish this about the tears though. The program that I was in was a 3-week Monday through Friday residential program, and for 3 straight weeks. By the time I got to that last day when it was time to leave, it was as if a dam had broken, and I was crying nonstop. Like once I started crying, I couldn't stop crying. And I cried for about 3 days straight, nonstop. So while I was sitting in group processing, or while I was sitting in my individual therapy session, or while I was checking out, tears were flowing down my face. And the lovely and wonderful thing about it was that no one said anything. No one made me feel uncomfortable about it. They just acted like it was normal, because really this was the place that they knew that I needed to get to. So I felt safe to do it, and that I didn't have to dry them up. And like I said, I'll talk more about that safety part at the end of this episode. Okay, number 3, there's a financial challenge. Often Black women do not have adequate insurance coverage, nor feel that they can or should spend hard-earned money on their mental and emotional health, not realizing that their physical health is impacted as well. And that's a bit of what I talked about earlier. And I was in that position. I had insurance, but the insurance wasn't going to cover what I was trying to and needing to do. And so I was able to, by the grace of God, work out a payment plan, a sliding fee scale and a payment plan with the people who ran the clinic. And to allow me to be able to go. And that's how I was able to do that. So what I'm saying is, where there's a will, there's a way. It just depends on what we prioritize. Okay. Stigma. Many Black women do not seek help because they do not want to be labeled as quote unquote crazy, quote unquote weak, or quote unquote too sensitive. And those second to the not wanting to be labeled as weak or too sensitive were big ones for me, because I can recall as a child and growing up being told that I was too sensitive, and even as an adult being told that I was weak because I had a sensitive heart and a sensitive nature. And I wanted to prove that I was strong. And so I resisted. I had known about this clinic for years. I knew a couple of people who had gone, but I didn't feel like I could do it. But then when I had that dream, that sort of foreshadowing for my daughter, I knew I had to do it, and I knew I couldn't worry about that stigma, those labels. And finally, and this one might surprise some of you, but religion. Often individuals don't understand the connection between the spiritual and the psychological, and feel that seeking help indicates a lack of faith in God. And that is an error in thinking that many of us feel, and a message that many of us who grew up in church, as they say, a message that we can pick up, that it means that we lack faith if we are struggling or if we need to seek counseling. But actually, that one I struggled with. I was torn. There was a part of me that felt like somewhere along the way I lacked faith in God, and if I could just have more faith, then I would just be able to overcome all of these things on my own without help. But I really didn't understand that a big part of the healing was the environment. Being able to be in a safe, emotionally safe and supportive environment is necessary, is vital for healing. And I believe that these individuals were sent by God for that purpose, to help me. And I recall that it was the first time I really remember being seen completely and yet still loved completely, and what's the word I'm looking for? Just as I am, and just as I was at that time. That is so vital, and that's why it's so important for you to seek wise counsel from someone that feels emotionally safe to you. And in some of our environments, that can be hard to find. But let me tell you what the Bible says about seeking wise counseling. And this is from Proverbs chapter 1, verse 5, the NIV version. And it says, "Let the wise listen and add to their learning, and let the discerning get guidance. There's another translation says, let those with understanding get guidance. It is biblical to seek wise counsel. And I believe that the learning that, at least in part, that is being spoken about here includes learning about ourselves, learning how we are, what is our makeup, learning what are the lie-based heart beliefs that we have internalized about ourselves that are hindering us and that have us in bondage. Gaining that understanding and that guidance. As a trauma recovery coach, I am more of what you would consider a peer counselor. And so you're in the driver's seat, and I'm sure this is with all counselors. You are in the driver's seat. I'm just kind of helping guide you from the passenger side, guidance. But mainly a lot of it is emotional support. A lot of it is psychological education, but a lot of it is just emotional support, because so often we know what we need to do. We just need some help. We need some support. And God has sent that to me over the years in different ways, whether it has been in mentors and in teachers. And like I said, the people in the clinic were in all different areas of mental and emotional health support. So don't limit yourself to what you think. Don't have a narrow view, because you never know who God is going to send to be that person or those people to help you. And it is biblical. Now, for my journal entry for this episode, I'm gonna end with this. But when I was at the clinic, they had us write letters to ourselves, but not just any kind of letter, but a positive letter, an affirming letter, a letter that we would write to someone else, because so often we can be more kind and loving to other people, so much more kind and loving to other people than we are to ourselves. And so they had us write this letter to ourselves that, let me tell you, I could never have written when I first got there. But by the end, when it was time to leave, I was able to write this letter. Now, I probably should have meditated on and read this letter more often over the years, because there are still some of these areas where I'm still trying to reprogram my thinking to grasp these concepts so that they become natural and automatic. But I would never have been able to write this letter had it not been for the supportive love and encouragement of these mental and emotional and spiritual health professionals. And I'm just going to read you a portion of it. And I said, "Dear Janet, how can I say how proud I am of you, your strength and your courage? You have strived to know yourself and heal yourself with God's help, and I greatly respect you for that. You don't run away from the hard stuff. You face it head on and deal with it. Most of all, I respect your determination to love yourself and see yourself as wonderful, the way God sees you. No matter what disadvantages have hindered your growth, you continue to teach yourself a new and healthier way to be in the world. To be. Identity, right? How I show up, not what I do, but who I am. Every day you grow stronger and healthier and closer to the person God created you to be. You are a living example for others to follow. Don't feel like that most of the time. Like I said, need to keep reading this letter to myself over and over again. Take your light from under the bushel and let it shine for the world to see. Can somebody pray for me here? Because I'm still working on doing that. Speak from your heart and trust God with the outcome. And I'm going to stop there and just say that I pray that we all have people in our lives who make us feel safe enough to be who we are, where we are, so that we can continue our healing journeys and wellness journeys and wholeness journeys. That's it. I love you. Stay tuned for the a few things I want to share with you that are coming up at the end of this video. And the most recent is coming up in 2 weeks on February 24th. And it is about Jesus and how he dealt with emotional and mental health issues in what I call a biblical soul care plan. So I'll put the link in the description, and you only have 1 more week to sign up for that. It's in person and virtual, so go ahead and sign up for that. And then also on April 20th, I will be hosting my first women's conference. This first one is going to be virtual, and I'm doing it along with 3 friends of mine, and it's going to be such a great and interactive and just unique experience, because we're all such unique individuals and we're coming in our own unique ways. So ladies, I hope that you will sign up and join us. I will also put that information in the description, and I'm praying for you. I love you. Take care until next time. Bye.